very happy you all are here today for this very special reading by poet Simone White in response to the exhibition Lorna Simpson, 1985 to 92.
I'm not going to say a lot about this book. I'm just going to read from some of it, but the first thing that I'm going to do, I think, is to read this little note that I've written to Lorna, who we can imagine is here with us today, and is here with us today. I'm going to keep looking because I have friends coming in the side door too. Dear Lorna, it's important for everyone here to know there was no way for me to be there in 1987. Not yet in the streets, trailing. About lateness, being behind, or following, or being taught. Being taught, for example, that it was necessary to release myself from the idea of being on the same level as those who teach me, an impossible matter of time. One danger is the danger of repeating patterns of opposition we believe we have discovered, so the urge to formulate a question such as, what if the idea of the Black artist in her youth, her influences and development fundamentally misconstrues the sense of time that belongs to her and that she offers in the discoveries she presents. This question could be understood as an intellectual habit, and I hesitate over it in attempting to write to you today in public. My subject is a complex relation of mutual, almost geological discovery of one another. The fibers of capital and love hold us all, being okay with that. If the outcome is speed, all manner of turns within the horrible pressing down. When I find a friend, the lightness and power in the transit of what's called soul. I never saw an issue of bee culture because I was just a kid and still haven't made it to the Schomburg. But think of it, being ready in 1987. You're Bell Hooks, you're Greg Tate, who has already seen the picture. You're where you are supposed to be in 1987, probably just above Midtown, unfolding some newspaper. And the whole thing cracks open for you, so there's a terrible slit in chaos that wasn't there before. It's there for you. It's made for you. It's not you. You couldn't have made it. In 1987, I was 15. An astonishing amount of classic rap music was released that year. Music that is beautiful to me, including MC Shan's The Bridge, a song about trying to party without getting beaten or shot. The sound of that music is the image of the world in which I have come to live. No history of rap music can tell you how it comes to pass that this sound is an element of the groundwork of how I am in the world. It's up to me as an artist to do that, to show how everything that has happened could only emerge through me and at this time and in this way. If what I have made is taken up, it's my hope that it will be because it is recognized by those with whom I am trying to communicate as an obstacle to reason and the aesthetic, to which exist to block those who would block, those who would have the capacity to frustrate, to eliminate the likes of me, and are in league with the unintelligible. A matter of time is repeating the scene in which this discovery of water bearer is recognized by Black people as, for no lack of other ways of putting it, true. All kinds of coincidence is involved. You have to be Black to make something that can be the product of something called Black cognition. You have to be there, but then again, you don't. What does Black feminism become in a world where Black people are not, as my father used to tell me, the most hated people on earth? I'm always surprised to learn that A.B. Spellman was saying the same thing 10 years earlier to Greg Tate. Probably you have to be 23 before you can live with knowing that. Working class Black people are the most despised and feared group of people on this earth. What is such a devastating world? What does Black feminism become, where Black women are not, I don't even know what to call it. Hurston says mules. I say the mistress of the world. You say bearers. Where we are not expected to carry the hatred of Black people and reproduce it, that world. Maybe all we have is recognition of the existence of one who does not live in history. The problem of working Black women contained within, but also to the side of the claim that Black people are and will ever be despised, is a pretty one, a thorny one. Lorna, I have so much to say to you. I cannot say all of it today, nor would I in this place, keeping only to the sense of the feminine within the particularity of race. The question is, what is feminism without hatred of women? What would this experience be? We have to deal with the problem of speaking to the unborn and the dead in art. Somebody said this, Greuze. So the knowledge of being the most hated, as it were, has a time-space aspect to it. When I was 26, in 1998, I did not fear death or disease, poverty or rape. I lived in fear of my father's contempt. Patriarchy had no limit, no horizon. I was completely in its grip. When you were 26, in 1986, you made Water Bearer. Time-space probably sounds like some fake, highbrow, astral traveling bullshit. Like when people who are heavily into electronic music start talking about how the machines work, whether analog or digital. I have no idea what's in those machines or how they work. Here, I'm trying to unfold something about how you have communicated with us and made it possible to find what is in the works again and again when we are before them. Not influence. It is the magic that is in the universe where everything happens at the same time, or could, such as this walking in space where the Black woman is not the locus of the world's violence. When I see words, they have penumbra, frightening tentacles that can make the simplest word impossibly dense with activity. Misinformation. The glass blocks that appear in recent work come racing through the poke holes the materials in this building have made in the order of things. The blocks are ice, they are resin, they are water, they are invisible, they are impenetrable. We can speak to one another when the rest is in suspense. Love, Simone. I have become misaligned or crooked with respect to the field of dependency, basically a free radical. If I keep looking at the word independent, I can see it surrounded by practices of sex work. It is always pussy that gives me value, and this fact of undeniable facticity must also enter my estimation of the state of my own excess. The forms my life takes have berserk intensity, dissolute facticity. Whatever means I use to accomplish liberation will lead inevitably to the destruction of someone's marriage. That's true. You rail against men. My lover writes to me, we use an encrypted form of digital messaging as if anyone cares what we say to one another. Certainly, I do not believe that anyone does, but these are his wishes. Men as they exist in their bodies are not the subject of my interest, so I do not rail against them. That is a misrepresentation of the whole of my aesthetic and phenomenological project, which involves taking up the vision I have been given of my own freedom. I have been given a vision of it, life beyond use. The white woman who owned the fancy nail salon I go to fired the manager I loved, a black woman photographer who treated me with professional respect for my time, my lack of it. She knew my work and the work of my sister. She let me use my paid-for seat as a place to weep behind the screen of her conversation, using herself as a blessed covering for me. I realized those bitches don't want me in here. I understood I had witnessed an act of aggression against our presence, our desire to be adorned, to have comforts, to cultivate the rot of this corruptible, all its deathy glory. The nigger woman is the mistress of the world. Optimal dependency being a flowering of sexual and other forms of competition. Indeed, the field articulated as has been is a mode of transit to and fro in a determinate plane, a machine parallelism, slide even, a thought that allows for the permanent possibility of trajectory when what arrests, contracts, seizes time in time, swallows, causes the secure ego to become anxious, the round back of pouncing animalia, my swooping compatriots and all prey. Movement unsafe and disorganized in this beautiful quantum wilderness, these are the materials. Oh, the photographer I'm talking about is Dana Scruggs, who took this photograph. Note the absence of wind from where I am, hunched in the kitchen, awaiting the return of my child. I blow smoke through rigged-up exhaust and wonder, is this further evidence of having lost control of the present? That winds do not blow back my smoke upon me. Am I so off course to the natural world? My boy's prepositional weirdness tells the substance of his growth, which I approve. I too obsess on basic shit, more so wishing to be overtaken by heavenly voices, dark and deep, talking to me anyway, none other than the God of, say, precious lore. I did not know that aperture God, though I know the blank intimately this day, this filament God come through on very small air. Woke up coughing, feeling exposed, feeling something must be in my throat, coughing, feeling unsure about the nature of observation. I had already been warned I would affect the aggregation if I refused. I had always been afraid of what would happen to me if I could not learn to control my strangeness. I thought of the ways I had been helped by the women who had helped me. Had I poisoned what was the agreement I had made? Had I agreed? Is that what had happened? I would not call it despair, this feeling I have stumbled upon a nameless register of social life riven by the human power to withdraw care. The pulses are of love, awareness of one another being passed on and through. We speak of sound as a place where this aspect of the known world becomes intelligible and worship it there. The great woman poets, Notley especially, provide nothing, though I look to them also in love when I suspect I am in the wake of a collective jolt, that is, moving away from the consequence of my little war, to be absolute or blind in the way I protect my sense of where there can be life. The women who had helped me, who refused help, for my own good, or refused to speak with me because I don't exactly know why. Contamination, because it is already too hard, and they had already decided about the little war not to be in its violence, which I was bringing to us, to them. The cost of being strange has something to do with the energies of these women, their power to cut me off. I'm gonna skip the most demanding poem in the group. It feels really hard to read it right now. I'm gonna skip it, and then I'll see if you feel tired after I read these other poems. This one's not hard, but it has a lot of bad words in it. Okay. No man has ever not tried to steal from me. Okay, I'm gonna repeat it because it's hard. It's got a lot of negatives in it. No man has ever not tried to steal from me. That's wrong. The man who never tried to steal from me never wanted to be with me like that, while the man I was with who explicitly stole from me was so crazy at the time I didn't think much of it structurally, or I could not think structurally at the time. In California, prairie light and scenes for Midwinter Day were coming to me in a confusing way via social media. I wrote to Laura, I had a dream in which I was overcome or beset by a kind of erotic storm, encircled by lovers, that is, men of whom I would say fucking is eternally in the nature of our bond. The transmutational properties of masculinity, the three, forcefully whipping around me, having become a cosmos of presence to myself, my mises with no share of the bearing down. Inside their fucking gyre, I transmitted a signal for help, but it could not escape because the force of the dimensions which they were or were creating was a black hole. The real blackness of the hole was true. I woke up knowing what words to say. Say the dream, Laura. Within 2 or 3 days, I had been trying to identify the name of the pressures. No, I cannot remember what any of them had done to me. I try to remember forming an intention. Now, I am going to act as crazy as possible and threaten to go to his job and tell his mama and his best friend what kind of person he is and how he has been stealing from me all these years, and telling people I am a spoiled bitch because I have all these degrees and won't take my baby out of private preschool. So I was acting crazy and smoking out the window of my house, screaming into the garden at the mourning doves, looking at me like I was crazy. I stopped when he said a number, I guess. I can't remember much about it because I got pretty drunk afterward and woke up in the night thinking, Lord, I am not able to do this much longer. Please let this man see my humanity. In 2 or 3 days, I had learned there was no name for the pressures. It was the most ordinary black womanhood, which is not nameless, has all the names of us, and is nameless, and has no intention, and is strategic. One of the days, a young dancer came up and said to me, I don't know how to embody the musical problems. And I said, well, how does it make you feel? I began to be able to speak of it myself when I felt myself growing more graphically male through its practice. I listen at deafening loudness in my car. Clearly, I am trying to hurt myself. The words they say, they have a newness. I promise never to speak the words in my poems, not in defiance of interpretation, but because they are so creepily hostile and unfunny. The interior they assume and address, so murderous, I don't see the point of repeating them. This is what words do. How does it make you feel? You are not allowed to have feelings. You are not allowed to have anything. And when you have something, somebody will try to take it from you. Don't doubt it for a second. There is no honor in patriarchy. It is a drug. Sometimes I allow my eyes to roll back in its vicious pleasure. I can feel joy if I remember I am feeling the power of myself as a vacuous thing, an unknown thing, out of which words come under pressure, begin to make new, so that the structure of the poem was falling down around me, as were the constitutive energies of what I was, such as they were visible or detectable to me. I sensed them breaking, they were already broken. This was the condition of which the poem must consist. The radiant materiality of circuitous attacks, some such as might be deflected, others helplessly slip inside what is. And I'm going to read one more. I'm skipping the hard ones, they're too long. Oh, this is the last poem in this book, and it begins with a longish quote from Meme Bersenbrugge, a poem called Ideal of hers. Two particles that make a continuum or ideal, and how the space between them relates to a third event, as how clouds against a window pane admit space that continues to a cloud on the mountain, a sheath of a space of feeling in the material sheaths of her body for perceived order, depend on your having felt the relation. That's Meme. Poetry, that which had never failed. All I invented were new ways to arrange things as time on my nerves, every word they say, another source of fucking chagrin. In poetry as life, forms appear meaningless before my anger. I cannot find a logic, aside from straight dope, capable to pierce the exactitude of pure rage. Losing the original thread or intention of the poem emotionally, or its having spent itself in encounter with its master emotion. Who are you? Why are you in my life? What have you to do with me and the child? A study of Bersenbrugge, a study of Chief Keef, such that for several days I worked toward blending various techno-discursive aspects of the noun gorilla, the noun time. I recognized a multidimensional order of the ape and set about organizing how I wanted others to experience that point. It made a lot of sense. My lover in his life and work suggested to me the possibility of promulgating this kind of information through machines, but I had not the skills. I told him so. Insofar as I had not, I had to stay mute. Before the possibility of time, I was lost. Something in a distance, occasional chimes, iteratively proposing I could bring a new kind of thing near, an unbearable demand that involved sloughing off understanding of the words that conform around the impression that I was being squeezed to death, or, alternatively, invited to unbind myself. Often, it is difficult to remember, recursively to address the emotion called anger by others, drawn dramatically into a course of events, with only the most rudimentary sense of what might be accomplished or known. My father was a student of patriarchy, thus wasted some part of considerable genius, yet he gathered to raise his girl children as men, an act of love. The residual estrangement and sexual impossibility he began to understand quite late. Already he was dying. When advices or odors of retreat came into his language, he was panicking about the space of isolation he saw forming around me, how it was impossible for me to understand words outside of fucking when they were coming to men, how they made no sense. There was no urban gesture of a black man I could fail to understand as I had been taught. We were together in a certain prismatic form of being lettered, such as the intestinal decay I perceived on him before the diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. See, it is so difficult to stay naming the situation I intend. Anger, laughable in its failure to reflect being, at least among the persons here, among those loved. Anger, springing up relentlessly to cover over the truth, enumerating the transports of being loved and hated as an obvious and embodied problem of art. On that, the problem of the properties of this music, which has none of the features ascribed to it because description is the problem. The considerable genius of many persons passes over me as I sleep. Cancers take me. I lose my crystal vessels, other talismanic objects I keep around, to a neglectful curator of African American family history. I am distinctly and rightly paranoid about oncoming institutions. I have so little time to get my son up right before I am no more, or extinguished by the humor I find in stuff like downward class mobility. Urgently experiencing negative divisibility, and I cannot picture it to you. Composing on Pope L, a little treatise comes into my mind on nigger in the title Materiality. Also, washed up, future in the problem of diminishing longevity. All distances in space and time are shrinking. Martin Heidegger. I am not humorless. I'm amused by the necessity of reading Heidegger because I can read. In the same way, I am able to love a man because I can love. No one says we can be safe together because we are together. This is where there is next to go what I am struggling to get to. The torment of experiencing the fullness of imagination outside form is this, right? This problematic of possible injury, the certainty of it until the end of this order, where every foray into vision is an occasion for attack. There is no philosophical language for the balm of this injury and horror of its recession. The durational poverty of seeing, I point to this other place of ongoing work. But they will just want to watch the thing happen or make me make it happen for them. But if you don't want to get hurt, you can't be in it. Thank you.